China has dominated the global economy in many respects over the past decade, with the world's largest public works projects ever imagined, easy money policies, and a consistent widening of the markets. China has been able to become a stronger force indeed. With the tension between China and the West, particularly the US, they have decided to form their own supranational banking establishment known as the AIIB. That's the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank. The clear and obvious intention has made headlines as of late, but the inevitable result will be a shockwave felt throughout the system. You came here for the truth, so let me unveil that for you. We are going to talk about the AIIB today, its importance, and also get into the issues that have arisen with China itself. Of course, it's not all ups, there are some downs, and let's connect it into some other things as well. Beginning with this article out of the Telegraph, the China-backed Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, viewed by some as the rival to the World Bank and the Asian Development Bank, was formally established on Friday. So I want to make 2 points here. First is that we've been talking about the AIIB recently, and it's in that forming phase as they were getting funding, but now it's official. Now it's actually in place as of this video, as you're seeing this. And also wanted to mention the fact that you have this hegemony in place with the IMF, the World Bank, and others, which obviously decide what countries do with the money that they give them. They're very restrictive, and we've seen all of the destructive forces, particularly with the IMF. They loan you money, but then you basically are in debt to them in many ways. Look at Greece, look at these other European nations that have accepted bailouts from the IMF. They're in big trouble. The United States and Japan, the world's largest and third largest economies respectively, have notably declined to join the bank, which is expected to begin operations early next year. So you have two of the bigs in the world, first and the third in their economy size, declining. Initially, Japan was supposedly going to join, but they decided not to. So they're forming a faction. They're choosing their sides. But look at this. Australia, Germany, and Britain are going to join. They're all part of this. So we can see a little bit of, disagreement that's taking place here. We'll see how it all pans out. There's more in this article if you would like to read. Basically just goes into the establishment, how it is now official. The AIIB is legally established as the Articles of Agreement take effect today. It goes on to discuss that. Let's move on here where we have this article, and it is reporting about what's happening, Philippines getting in at the last moment. But what I want to highlight from this is the fact that there are 57 countries that have joined this. So think about that for a second. China is obviously the leader of this. They have invested the most amount of money, but they're definitely the ones spearheading the AIIB. When you have 57 countries from literally all corners of the world joining up to that, they're saying, I want to be part of the AIIB. I want a part of this. And that means they have less money to put with institutions like the World Bank, like the IMF, and like investing in the US and the West. Ultimately, there's only so much money to go around, and they decided to park some of that money with the AIIB. So think of that and think of the ripple effect and how an investment in one country could, in fact, have that ripple effect going beyond that into other countries as well. Let's move on to this article out of the New York Times. Global economic growth will be disappointing next year. That's 2016, of course. And the outlook for the medium term has also deteriorated. That's according to the IMF head, Christine Lagarde. So what they're saying here, don't look forward to 2016. You're not going to get the growth that you expected. And in fact, they said the same thing about 2015. The IMF was actually correct in this, saying you're not going to get the growth that was initially predicted and prepare for a slowdown. IMF Managing Director Christine Lagarde said the prospect of rising interest rates in the United States and an economic slowdown in China were contributing to uncertainty and a higher risk for economic vulnerability worldwide. I do agree with these two things, but of course, where were they on this a few years ago? Nothing has really happened. And then they talk about global trade slowed down considerably. Look at the Baltic Dry Index hitting a record low. How important is that? I'm going to get into some others in my next video. In fact, we're going to talk about how this has all slowed down dramatically and the world's not talking about it. You barely see this stuff mentioned, and it's getting mentioned now that everything is so obvious. But when the cracks have appeared, nobody's talking about that because you just cover that crack up. But it's not going to work anymore. Let's move on to what I wrote about in my book about printing money. In a bull market, the Federal Reserve will expand the money supply to keep the banks lending and people spending. That's exactly what had happened in, let's say the 2000s. You had lots of money printing happening. You had easy monetary policies, not as easy as now, but still easy monetary policies. In all of the other crashes, which generally lasted many years, the Federal Reserve expanded the money supply even further, only amplifying the issue in the first place. So what do? You start to get a slowdown. Well, you ease even more and you print even more. It's a scheme that is just obviously going to run itself into the ground. And what I discuss here is the Depression of 1920 and its results should be a model for the restoration of all future crashes. This is an entire chapter, in fact, about what I call the ghost crash. That's 1920. It is the model for all future ones, however, has never been employed again after that. China's economy lost some luster and its leaders their aura of invincibility. A commodities boom went bust, spreading pain from Texas oil fields to Indonesian coal mines. And this article here is basically just going over all of the different things here, the top 10 business stories of the year. If you want to get a good summary, check out this article out of the AIIB. What I want to highlight is the first one, and that is China's slowdown. It took 5 years for people to become really worried about China's slow motion economic deceleration. The freakout finally hit global markets in August. The Dow Jones plunged 11% on fears everyone had underestimated China's troubles and the impact of the rest of the world. So you tell me now, what happened that it crashed 11%? Well, it's just fear. When the market is worried, things crash. But where does that money go? Well, it finds its way into something else. Not into your hands, not into my hands. It finds its way into the elite, so-called elite hands. Every time there is some sort of decline, that's an opportunity for those to come in and pick up the pieces. But the crash that we are expecting hasn't hit anywhere near yet. Even though the stock market has declined, essentially we are experiencing nothing, no gain for 2015. You're still, and that doesn't even factor in inflation. Those in the financial industry choose to ignore it. Why? Because they take a chart that starts from March 2009 and they show you their progress. And of course, everything looks rosy when you compare it to March 2009, the bottom of the crash. But that's just the way they do it. It's all manipulation. I'm not believing it, and I know that you aren't either. There are issues that are happening. Will China grow? Yes, absolutely, China will grow. But it's not without its downturns. Well, if you compare China to the US, is it growing more? Probably. The US is not what it used to be in many regards. But don't think that a country like China can't slow down and it can't even go in the negative, perhaps. But all I'm trying to say is that it's not, impervious to all sorts of different economic downturns and everything else. When they have to relax the lending standards to this much, when they have to employ QE, you know that there's trouble. China is just one country of many who's doing this. They're all in this together. It is, they gather together at the G20 and Davos and at the IMF meetings and at the World Bank and the UN. They're all discussing policies that they will all put in place together at the same time. Don't think that there are borders. And you look at your map, you see a border, but in truth, there aren't any. You see a parliament, you see a Congress, you see a president or a prime minister, any form of head of state. None of these exist. Unfortunately, the lines have been blurred a long time ago. Let me just move on to one last article very quickly. I just wanted to get into this. As we see the Cashless Society taking place, Sweden is one who has really done this at an extreme rate compared to some other countries. Few places are tilting toward a cashless future as quickly as Sweden, which has become hooked on the convenience of paying by app and plastic. Many places simply don't accept cash anymore. Does that mean that cash is illegal, cash is banned? No, but it's just becoming hard to come by. There's more in the article here. I think I won't get into it. Just wanted to mention this once again. I am covering the Cashless Society every chance I get. Every time I see this happening in a different country, I will definitely bring it up. It's important to note why the governments are imposing a cashless society in many ways, and that is simply for control. That's why they want it. Every transaction tracked and traced. Everything that you do tracked and traced. Cashless society is just one small example. If you found this video informative, please give me a thumbs up, share the video, subscribe to the channel. If you're not already, if you've been watching, please subscribe to the channel. I post videos practically every single day. I bring out information like you've just seen, different topics, geopolitical, financial, and everything in between. Last but not least, if you found the video informative, I know you'll find my book, The Money GPS, even more informative. You can actually flip through the book. If you go over to Amazon, they have this look inside feature. It allows you to flip through the pages of the book and see if you like it. Take care.